Welcome or welcome back. I'm so happy to be able to connect with you right now and to be able to share this space in this moment in time. I had a check in call with my primary care physician, and we are waiting to see how my throat and sinuses do over the next few days because it's been a couple of weeks with whatever's happening in my system. And if you are familiar with Louise Hay, she has written about emotional roots of physical ailments, not scientifically researched, but it has been food for thought for me. And so when I looked up throat problems, I was just talking about the inability to speak my truth. And so it's actually really interesting that I have been able to record and post these videos since September 29th of 2025, because I often feel like there isn't a point to sharing what I'm thinking about or what I've gone through. Maybe with people that I feel really close to, I'll get excited and I'll want to let them know. And depending on what they feel comfortable with, I'll share bits and pieces of me. Um, and those people are not the people who are physically closest to me, but usually the people who I feel emotionally comfortable with and safe with. And so I haven't quite gleaned all of the lessons or opportunities that this 90-day challenge will have for me, but I am excited that I am continuing and that in this corner of the internet, I get to share my voice and speak my truth with whoever will listen. So thank you so much for being here. I, oh, yes, a practice. So if you have your phone or devices set where you get sound alerts, pings, um, ringtones, however you call them. I wonder if you can use that similar to how people in the monastery use the gongs or the singing bowls, or a bell to awaken your focus or attention. So I think it's easy to hear those sounds on our phone, the phone ringing, a text alert, um, and just sort of jump at whatever we are anticipating is arriving or to be curious about what's arriving. But much like any other mindfulness practice, I wonder if you can use it as a moment of your day just to pause and tune in. So, using some of the soundtracks of our days, of our lives, to help us come back into the moment. So, just a suggestion. Feel free to take what resonates and to leave what doesn't, and possibly another tool for you in your toolbox. So, if this is going to be related to a couple of different topics I've already talked about, but just to go in depth. So, I recorded a video talking about my soul's blueprint and actually explaining, I think, this 90-day challenge. And I guess just this idea that I have never really wanted all of the things or many of the things on society's checklist, society's blueprint, the American dream, right? So go to school, get good grades, go to university, get good grades, get a good job, get a career, get married, have children, buy a house, buy cars, and then based on your region, right? Whatever else. And so it's hard if it isn't what you subscribe to because we are constantly bombarded around what you should be doing and what the norm is, and the whole idea of keeping up with the Joneses or keeping up with the Kims or keeping up with the whoever's, right? Depending on your region, your neighborhood, all of those things, right? And so I've been thinking about and having conversations with people about this idea of my soul's blueprint and the things that ground me and help me to feel like I am being the person I want to be and then I'm living a life that feels fulfilling. And I have this great graphic that I created, really basic, really simple, using an app on my iPhone, Freeform. And I just use a bunch of hexagons to hold each thing that is important to me. So the blip, the screenshot that I'm using this week includes treat myself kindly, accept, express myself fully, and to enjoy more moments than not. Right. So I'm looking at that, and every time I see my lock screen, I'm reminding myself to take a look at it and then to see if I can do any of those things. So then I feel like, okay, I've worked on these things and I'm working on these things, and it feels fulfilling, it feels satisfying, it feels good. So that's good. But I've been thinking about society's blueprint, right? Because I'm trying to replace it with my own. And I'm trying to figure out how to deal with the inundation of the reminders of who I should be or how I should be or what I should have. And I found myself this weekend. I parked my car in valet, and I was looking at the cars around me, and I was feeling embarrassed about the car that I drive. And, I left the car and went inside the hotel, and then I was doing things, and then when I needed to drive and leave, got the car, and it came back, that feeling, right? And the last time I can remember feeling embarrassed about my car was in my 20s. It was like my early 20s. I had maybe been working for a year or two outside of, like, after graduating from college. And I had bought a used car, and it was a luxury brand car because it was similar to a car that my mom had bought. So I was like, okay, sort of brand loyalty, right? And at that time, I was working with students who were enrolled in an after school program within an alternative school. So, an alternative school being outside of the district school or your home school, not being homeschooled, but the school that you feed into, right? Based on your location, what school is closest to. So, these students were, instead of being kicked out of the district and having to find an entirely new district to go to, these alternative school sites were set up so that it would still be near them, but it was a different system, right? So that their expulsion didn't mean that they were not going to school at all. So these students were facing different challenges and obstacles and within their community, within their own individual experience, within their social um, setting, and just depending, like, social economic status, right? And so I was a little embarrassed about my car because I felt too fancy. So I would try to park further away or wait until everyone left, right? Just to not rub it in their faces. And so this past weekend and within the last couple of months, I've had the experience where I felt embarrassed that my car is older, is run down, is like the paint is chipping, things like that. So feeling embarrassed and living in a region where so many people have the latest and newest cars, and that's a symbol of making it, right? And so it makes me think that my society's blueprint is about the haves and the have nots, right? What do you have? What don't you have? And judging yourself based on that and striving towards having those things on the list. And in talking about it and thinking about it, and also just feeling bad, feeling guilty for not doing more, feeling like a failure that I haven't accomplished and I haven't met these milestones that my peers have. I know that I can't force myself to want those things. I don't want to own a home at this point. I don't want to, drive a car that costs more money than I have out of my means, right? And again, it's reinforced. And I had this conversation with my mentor. And when I was telling her, I haven't really wanted these things, and I listed the things, and she's like, "Yeah, no, that doesn't sound like you at all. Like, I know we don't have a chance to get to know each other, in depth, but in the 4 years that I've worked with you, like that doesn't feel like you at all." So I was like, okay, that was affirming, right? So this idea that I'm trying to create my own standards and my own parameters, my own milestones, my own benchmarks makes sense. And it felt like I'm on a good path. And she had said, the society's blueprint seems like it's about what you have, but it feels like you've always been about who you are, like being, like who can I be, not what can I have. And so I've been sitting with that instead of the haves and the have-nots. For me, my value system, my framework, my personality, my experiences, I am much more motivated to focus on who I am and who I'm becoming rather than stuff. So so to have versus to be, essentially. And one of my rise and thrives, my spiritual version of a ride or die, we were talking about this and just how exhausting it is when you realize that you don't fall within society's blueprint. It's not your framework, but to choose yourself and what you value over what is constantly being inundated through social media, through your neighborhood, through your communities. It's exhausting, right? It's like, and then to be able to find people who are aligned and who share something similar. I'm sure we are out there or we are coming into this understanding about ourselves, but it's hard not to have that community of support or that community of becoming to help us to feel like we can choose our path or what's more aligned with us instead of the next item on society's blueprint, right? I sigh. I sigh for myself. I sigh for my parts. I sigh for my inner child who just wants to play and enjoy and get messy and not worry about what people are thinking about her. And so back to this weekend and driving my car. So when I got on the road to drive home, I was thinking about something that I've been sitting with, this idea that I don't have to be defined by my circumstances, my conditions, right? So I'm driving and I'm thinking about how I've heard people talk about our bodies as a vessel, as a vehicle, right? It's not necessarily who we are, but it allows us to experience this three-dimensional reality universe that we're in, right? To be able to smell and hear and to see and to taste and to feel, right? But ultimately, my body is a vehicle that will be returned to somewhere when it's time for me or my soul to transition physically out of this body. So, using that idea, I was thinking, I don't have to be defined by what I don't have. A fancy car, fancy new car, a new car. I don't have to be defined by the fact that I don't have that. And I can choose to be my true self, which is my essence, and my essence, which is non physical. And really, for me, an extension of source energy. That's hard because on the daily, I'm not always connected to source and I'm not always remembering that I am source energy and that I am connected to everything in the universe, right? Especially if I'm stuck in old mental patterns, old mental habits, and emotions that I've allowed to like drive, or the ones that I ignored and they've come back with a vengeance. And so it was really helpful for me to say that to myself a couple of times. I'm not defined by anything outside of my essence. I'm not defined by anything outside of my truest self. I'm not defined by the car I drive. I'm not defined by what I don't have. And that was enough in that moment to shift and sort of move that embarrassment around so that I could pause, tune in, not identify with that story or that narrative. And then there was this moment of gratitude. I'm grateful that I have this vehicle to drive me to and from these places so that I get to have these experiences and spend this time. And I could really feel the gratitude, not just on an intellectual level, which sometimes happens when I'm not embodying, right? I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make the gratitude list, but I'm not feeling it sort of void of embodiment. But in that moment when I chose to detach and not identify with that old story or recent story or a story that comes out of many, many years of feeling behind or like a failure, that I didn't have to be defined by that story anymore. So that was really powerful. And it was a moment amongst many other moments that day. But I hope that in talking about it and sharing it, if there is a part of you that's ever felt that, even if it's just questioning, like, I know they say that I should become a parent, but I don't really want to be a parent for whatever reason, right? Or if you do want to be a parent, but you haven't like really understood why, right? To just get clear about some of these things that you think you should be doing, figuring out the why or the why not, and then making a decision if it's right for you, if it's aligned with who you are, who you want to be, who you're becoming. Because I think that's where we get our power back. That's where, it's not just the subconscious thing that we're doing because all of our friends have gotten married and we're the last one. So that, oh, I'm I'm behind or I'm left out, right? Like just to have that clarity behind why, I think allows us to have the intentionality and the choice, even if it goes against what every one of our friends is doing. And it is a lonely journey. It can feel like a very lonely journey, and it does take a lot of reckoning and a lot of navigating and processing. But for me, at the end of the day, if I'm not aligned with what's important to me, with who's important to me, with what matters, it feels like I'm betraying myself. And that might be very harsh. It might be too much, and that's okay if it is for you, right? For me, in my experience, not living in alignment has cost more than just doing what everybody else is doing. And so, offering this idea around maybe for you, it's not about the haves or the have nots. Maybe it's about who you want to be, who you want to become. Maybe it's about who you help and who you don't help. Maybe it's about how you serve. Maybe it's about something else entirely. But I think to be able to give yourself the space, the permission to explore and figure this out for yourself, it is work. I think it's important work. And I hope that you one day have the space, courage, resources to be able to do it. Because I can only imagine if more of us were living in alignment with who we are, with who we truly are, with what is important, that we might see a lot of shifts in our families, in our workspaces, in our communities, in our schools, in our countries. Because it's hard when you're just going along, following the motions, and it doesn't feel right for you. So, if there's anything that you would like to share, if you want to share what your framework is about, or that you're questioning and you want someone to think with, please feel free to reach out. I'm here. And I will bid you adieu. I hope you know, or that you will soon believe, that who you truly are, is worthy and deserving of unconditional love. I believe it. I believe in you. I know how important you are. And I hope you come to believe that if you don't already. So I look forward to connecting with you next time. Until then, please take good care. Okay, bye bye.